the biggest decisions a trustee will make is this. Do we sell the property as is, or do we invest in preparing it for the market? Because that one decision can mean the difference between leaving money on the table or maximizing the value of the estate. Today, I'm going to share 3 real estate trust sales case studies that generated hundreds of thousands and in some cases millions of additional dollars for beneficiaries simply because the trustees took the time to evaluate all of their options before making a decision. Hi, I'm Paula Aragone with Aragone & Associates. For more than 23 years, we've helped trustees, attorneys, fiduciaries, and families throughout Orange County navigate complex trust property sales. We maximize value and minimize stress. Strategy is what we do. Most trustees default to the same decision. Let's just sell as is. And honestly, that makes sense. You're dealing with a major life transition. Often there's emotional stress, family dynamics, and a property that may not have been updated in years. The idea of taking on improvements can be overwhelming. But here's the reality. Selling as is often means you're positioning the property for investors rather than end-user buyers. And investors don't buy based on what the property is worth today. They buy based on what they believe they can create tomorrow. That means they're building their profit, their risk, and their margin into their price. When you're deciding whether to sell as is or prepare a property for the market, you're really deciding which buyer pool you want to attract. Investor buyers are looking for opportunity. They expect a discount. They expect repairs. They expect upside. End-user buyers are different. They're buying a home. They're buying into a lifestyle. They're buying emotion. And the way a property is presented often determines which group shows up. So the real question isn't, should we spend money? The real question is, what strategy positions this property to attract the strongest buyers and create the highest and best outcome for the estate? When trustees hear the word improvements, they often think major renovations. That's rarely what we're recommending. We're talking about strategic preparation, the improvements that create the greatest impact with the least amount of investment. Paint, staging, lighting, landscaping, minor repairs. The goal is not to over-improve the property. The goal is to maximize buyer perception because perception directly impacts value. Let me show you what this looks like in real world. We were contacted regarding a trust property on West Bay Avenue in Newport Beach. This was a waterfront home with a private dock in one of the most desirable locations in Newport Beach. Several agents had recommended selling the property as a teardown based primarily on land value with pricing recommendations of $5 million. Fortunately, the trustee was represented by Cheryl Barrett of Ferruso & Ferruso, one of Orange County's most respected trust and estate attorneys. Having worked together for more than 15 years, she understood that before making a decision, the trustee deserved to fully evaluate every option for maximizing value. When we evaluated the property, we saw something very different. Yes, the home needed updating, but we didn't see a tear down. We saw an extraordinary waterfront property with tremendous untapped potential. We recommended approximately $100,000 in targeted renovation work, focused only on key areas that would most impact buyer perception, presentation, and value. It was worth doing the work. over approximately 5 weeks, we completed the renovation, the improvements, the preparation, and staging necessary to reposition the property and attract end-user buyers rather than investors. Once completed, we launched the property. Within just 4 days on market, we generated multiple offers. The property ultimately sold for $7.2 million in an all-cash transaction, approximately $2.1 million more than the original recommendations. Same property, different strategy. And if you'd like to hear more about this particular transaction, Cheryl Barrett and I discussed this case in a separate interview available on our YouTube channel. Go listen to it. We were hired on another case by a corporate trustee, a bank institution, to handle the sale of a property on Poppy Avenue in Corona del Mar. The prevailing opinion from many agents that were local was straightforward. The home was a teardown. The value was in the land. The recommendations were seeing ranges from 4.9 to 5.1 million. But when we walked the home, we saw something very different. What we saw was a custom-built residence with excellent bones, a functional floor plan, quality construction, and architectural features that still had significant value. The home wasn't obsolete, it was simply dated. We recommended approximately $80,000 in carefully targeted improvements designed to reposition the property in the marketplace. Every recommendation was evaluated through the lens of fiduciary responsibility. Could the investment be justified? Would it increase the value of the estate? Would the anticipated return significantly outweigh the cost? After reviewing the analysis, the Board of Trustees approved the strategy and authorized the improvements. The result was a cash sale of $5,485,000. More importantly, the trustee and the board were able to demonstrate that they had carefully evaluated their options and pursue a strategy designed to maximize value for the beneficiaries. That's what fiduciary real estate strategy looks like. Our third example comes from a trust sale in Huntington Beach. On Edgewater, the trustee was represented by Amy Fennelly of the Fennelly Law Firm, another highly respected trust and estate attorney with whom we've had the privilege of working for more than 12 years. Like many experienced estate planning attorneys, Amy understands that maximizing value for beneficiary often requires more than simply accepting an initial opinion of value. That's why she wanted the trustee to fully evaluate all available options before making that final decision. When we became involved, several local agents had estimated the property value at approximately $4.3 million in its current condition. And to be fair, those opinions were based on the condition of the home as it existed at that moment, just how the home showed. But when we looked at the property, we weren't evaluating what it was like. We were evaluating what it could become in the eyes of the market. We spent approximately $20,000 on paint, staging, and strategic preparation. That's it, $20,000. The goal wasn't to change the property. The goal was to change how buyers felt when they walked through the front door. Once the property was properly positioned and presented, we brought it to market. The result was a sale of $5.8 million, approximately $1.45 million higher than where the property was initially being valued. Not because we rebuilt the home, not because the market suddenly changed, because we changed the presentation, we changed the buyer pool, and we changed the conversation. The best agents don't just determine value, they help create it. After more than 2 decades of helping trustees, attorneys, fiduciaries, and families navigate trust sales, I've learned something important. The biggest mistake is rarely selling too late. The biggest mistake is making a decision before fully understanding the property's potential. In every one of the examples we discussed today, the easy answer would have been to sell the property as is. The common recommendation was, don't spend the money, don't take the risk, just sell it as is. But what if those trustees had accepted the first opinion? What if they had never explored the alternative? How much value would have been left on the table for the beneficiaries? As a trustee, you don't necessarily have a duty to renovate. You don't necessarily have a duty to improve, but you absolutely have a duty to understand your options before making a decision. One of the things that makes trust sales different from traditional real estate transactions is that the goal isn't simply to sell the property. The goal is to make informed, defensible decisions that serve the best interest of the beneficiaries. Sometimes that means selling as is. Sometimes that means making strategic improvements. Sometimes it means doing nothing at all. The key is to understand which path creates the highest and best outcome, because the best agents don't just determine value, they do help create it. If you're a trustee, beneficiary, attorney, fiduciary, or financial advisor dealing with a trust property, and you're wondering whether it should be sold as is or prepared for the market, we'd be happy to help you look into the options. Before making any major decisions, we invite you to schedule a complimentary trust property strategy review. We'll help you evaluate the property's current market position, potential improvements, opportunities, estimated return on investment, timing considerations, and the various options available to maximize value for the estate. There's no obligation and no pressure. Our goal is simply to help trustees make informed decisions. Because as you've seen from today's 3 examples, the right strategy can make a remarkable difference. I'm Paula Aragone with Aragone & Associates. For more than 23 years, we've helped trustees, attorneys, fiduciaries, and families maximize value and minimize stress through the trust sale process. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with anyone navigating a trust property sale. And if you have questions you'd like covered in a future episode, leave them in the comments below. Strategy is what we do, and I'll see you in the next episode.